So we had multiple objectives for this workshop. One is to be able to explore an issue that has become quite salient as Africa moves forward with its democratization processes. And a huge part of that landscape is the media. And there are concerns about whether or not the media are doing what they're supposed to do to consolidate democracy. So one of the goals here was to bring together a group of colleagues who are working in this area to think about where things are, to see what can be done to ensure that the media play their expected role in these countries, and that if there's a need for any amends, that we're able to do so in a proactive way. The other piece is just the opportunity for these colleagues to come together and network, get to know one another, get to know one another's work. A number of them already know each other's work, but it's to build that community of people who continue to focus on this area of scholarship, and to know that there's an opportunity for them to learn from one another, to critique one another, to challenge one another, and to continue to push the frontiers of knowledge in this area. Finally, there are issues that are pertinent to Africa but are not exclusive to Africa. And so the idea is to look at how the knowledge that we're able to gain from the African context can be extrapolated into other places, so that we're impacting theory, knowledge practices in other areas as well. So those are some of the reasons why we came together this past couple of days to ensure that we're able to move forward on those objectives. Obviously, what we're looking at in terms of the outcomes from this engagement are, again, also multiple. The first, as scholars, obviously, we want to be able to dig deep into both the theoretical questions and the empirical manifestations of what it is that a free media system might look like, what are the constraints, and what are the possibilities for expanding the scope of things that are necessary to ensure that the media continue to endure as free spaces where people can engage, where we can become better versions of ourselves as democratic institutions and countries. And so there is that theoretical piece to it, but theory does not sit apart from praxis. And so part of it is to be able to glean from the knowledge that we get to be able to inform practice across a full spectrum of things with regard to reporters, journalists, media organizations, oversight bodies, so the number of regulatory bodies, what can they learn from this? And more importantly, to be able to share that knowledge across the spaces that we occupy as a continent. There's also the important value of comparative work. A number of people do this work in isolation or focusing on particular countries and so on. So the goal here is to be able to figure out what is it that is common, what is it that is making certain places move much more positively in consolidating media freedoms, what are causing reversals in other places, and how do we avoid, preempt, ensure that we don't descend into a reversal of the gains that have been made. It also allows us to understand the distinction among certain things that get conflated, such as pluralism and media freedom, and the perception that the more media institutions or organizations you have, the more likelihood that you have that. And so, what we learned from this actually, for me, is relevant in terms of just building new knowledge about these kinds of things, but sharing that knowledge across different constituencies. The goal, obviously, from this is not for it to end up within the four corners of where we met, but to be able to share that knowledge. From my perspective, knowledge that is not shared is knowledge that loses its salience and is relevant to real life situations. So the goal here is to be able to publish in academic journals where we are engaging, or some other edited volume where we're engaging with colleagues at the different levels of resolution that I talk about, right? Theoretically, in terms of professional practice and so on. So we want to be able to publish this and share that, part of our commitment to knowledge dissemination. But we also want to ensure that this work also informs policy. So in addition to academic venues, where obviously we want to subject this to the rigor that comes from the review processes, we also want to make sure that this knowledge is shared. So the potential for us to engage with media organization, practitioners, public policy makers, and so on, and various international organizations that are interested in this kind of work. So that is the goal, multiple places where this is shared. Popular media, there are a number of colleagues who engage in social media spaces and so on. And so having this work travel far and wide in multiple locations, because not everybody is able to access each of this, right? So the more we can spread the message, the better for all of us. The fascinating thing about being in spaces is the opportunity to learn when you engage with folks, right? None of us has monopoly of knowledge, none of us is omniscient. And so there's always something you learn, whether it is something entirely new or something that critically engages with your existing understanding of how things work. And so during this workshop, we had colleagues who were bringing new perspectives on how to approach these questions around media freedom. We heard about, Afroecology, for example, where we'd read about this, but to be in a space where the originators of the concept are there, telling you about them, but also being able to engage with the critique of their work, which allows all of us to leave with a new understanding of things, with kind of a prompt to how else we may be able to look at these questions and expand the repertoire of what it is that allows us to bring the right lenses to bear on the issues that we deal with. I think for me, the comparative work was always something I was looking forward to. And so hearing from an assembly of colleagues from across the country, North Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa, different regions of the continent, to be able to see what works and what doesn't. And so for me, a lot of this validated my own understanding of things, which is also good because we tend to, for a continent this diverse, we tend to homogenize things in different ways. And so the opportunity to be able to understand what is different, but also what is similar, was revealing, to me. I think the importance of recognizing that knowledge is not settled and that we need to continue to push the frontiers of knowledge because as we glean from different perspectives, different empirical cases and so on, it raises, for me, the opportunity to continue to probe, to understand, to better engage. So those were things that I took out of there. It was a robust, exciting set of conversations, and I think we all left feeling rejuvenated in some way, but also humbled in a lot of ways because people come to these analysis with particular positions, particular frames, and to be able to engage with folks who are able to bring you down to earth, if you will, in terms of recognizing the limitations of things that we do. I think the other piece as an academic was the methodological variation that we all saw. Colleagues were exploring these issues from multiple methodological perspectives, which I think enriches our overall understanding of things. The final thing I'll say was just the vibrancy that comes from working with people across disciplines. Because again, we're products of our particular disciplines, we approve things from what we know, and to have colleagues who are not necessarily in our field, although we all explore the same kinds of issues, was also really educational and cements the importance of working across disciplines when we're dealing with complex issues that have multiple facets like this one. I think in terms of things to take away for people who work in this field, from journalists to policymakers and so on, and civil society organizations for that matter, is understanding that these freedoms cannot be taken for granted, that they are fragile, and we have to continue to push for their consolidation.